What's she up to now? Day 2,752. Sharon Horne-Ellstrom here, documenting journey, talking about lessons learned along the way as I operate online and offline businesses, run my family and my life, create the life I want, sip coffee when I want to, and remind myself that no one is you, and that is your superpower. I like this. I love this cup. It's one of my favorite cups. Why? Because it reminds me to be me, and that's what our purpose is here on planet Earth. It took me a long time to determine what my purpose was, and I realized after much soul searching, much reading, much learning, much studying, much coaching, that my purpose is to be the best possible version of me. And incidentally, that's everybody else's purpose too. So part of that is sharing things that I learn along the way, sharing lessons learned, coaching and helping other people that are just like me become the best possible version of themselves. Well, today we are talking about, for both Be a Better You, this year's annual challenge, to do one thing every day to be a better version of ourselves. Just a little thing every day. It makes a huge difference over the course of 365 days. But today we're talking about step 4 of the SOAP framework, and that is progress. How do we know we're filling the gap between where we are and where we want to be in any area and aspect of our life, but specifically with respect to the emotional challenge area, the emotion that is challenging us right now that we decided to work on? I picked frustration, and I decided that I was going to change my rules and definition for what it takes for me to decide that I'm frustrated. Because the truth is, we decide how we're going to interpret every feeling in our body as an emotion. And we feel the emotions first, and then we name them. And naming them gives it power. But if I say, and then not only do we name them, but we decide and define what it takes in our body, in our surroundings, and every area and aspect that we have control over, which is our thoughts, our beliefs, our feelings, our emotions. We do have control over them, believe it or not. And the more we practice, the better we are at it. But I decided that for the Be a Better You portion of the challenge, I am going to redefine and rename and reset up the rules that it takes for me to actually experience frustration. And just like failure and depression, which I've done this too before, this strategy I learned from Jim Rohn and Tony Robbins back in the 80s, and I probably didn't actually start applying it and using it on any sort of frequency until the late 90s or even the 2000s. Might have been even after 2010. I don't know. I don't keep track of all of when I use different tools. But now it's the one I selected to use for this part of the challenge. And I have to measure and find a way to measure that. How do I know? How do I gauge that that's actually working for me? And I've decided that outside feedback, as well as tracking every day, how often and do I actually feel frustrated, or have I successfully redefined so that it's impossible for me to feel frustrated, right? No matter what anybody else does outside of me, frustration isn't going to be what I feel. It's kind of like hate. There's a few emotions that I've removed from my personal repertoire. And actually, I think one of the first ones I did was depression. In my 20s, I spent a few years really, really sick and bedridden, and the doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. Nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. And they pretty much just given up on me and said, here, take all these drugs, which it turns out were making me worse than the symptoms of whatever was wrong with me. And they just pretty much gave up and said, you come back in 6 months and see us and we'll see how you're doing. Well, guess what? I wasn't okay with that. I was okay with, I absorbed it. I dealt with that information from outside experts that I trusted for about 3 days, I think. And then I was like, yeah, not going to happen. I got to figure this out because they're obviously not going to figure it out for me. And that was a turning point when I took back personal power and control of my health, my destiny, and my life. Because otherwise, I probably wouldn't be here now if I had just gone along with what the doctors said and believed that they were all knowing, all powerful God physicians and that they knew what was best for me. But then, I don't know, something inside me told me that I knew what was best for me, and I better start listening to that, and I better start paying attention to the things that I could control instead of attention to the things that I could not control. It's where I actually use this same technique I'm using on frustration on depression. Because I'll tell you, be in your 20s when all your friends are out doing things and you're bedridden and in agony and pain and can't see and have all kinds of problems systemically, that you're not allowed to participate in those things, and see if you don't come up with being depressed. Now, a lot of people are depressed in society these days, and I try to be empathetic, but I also know that we have the ability, without a bunch of drugs and medications, to control and figure that out for ourselves. And when we do that, it's much more powerful and much more effective than when we depend on a pill to keep us feeling the way the doctors want us to feel. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents worth on that. All right, so I'm doing that with frustration. So that was in my 20s. So that was a long time ago that I've been using this strategy, and I will say it's effective. I seldom, if ever, I don't even know that I could get depressed. I'd have to work really hard to try to figure out how to be depressed nowadays. And guess what? I'm not gonna, because I don't want to. It's the same way I feel about hate. I don't really hate anyone. And there's some people that have definitely wronged me in the past that I just say I dislike them intensely. That's as far as I go. I don't say hate, and things like that. There's emotions that I just choose not to experience very often or on a regular basis. And by not choosing that, I regain my personal power and move my life in the direction I want it to go. All right. I guess share in the comments below today how you will measure, if you're doing the challenge right along with us, progress, or how do you measure progress now, moving from where you are to where you want to be in any area and aspect of your life, but specifically with respect to emotions, because emotions are what we're focusing on this month for both Supersize Your Business and the Be a Better You Annual Challenge. All right. If I can help you in any way, hit me up. Otherwise, have an awesome day, and I will, of course, see you tomorrow.